Welcome friends to another Dune video. Today we look to the classic Dune book by Frank Herbert and examine a key scene where Paul tries to be leader of all the Fremen. He is expected to fight Stilgar and needs a way to both avoid that and attain full control of them. What happens? Friends, let's find out. The Fremen cavern was packed with people. Jessica thinks they must not lose Stilgar. A young Fremen man asks Paul if he will call Stilgar out. Paul waits for silence from the crowd, then speaks for the Fremen as a whole when he says, "You are tired of waiting." He holds a message cylinder. It told Muad'Dib that Rabban had been abandoned. No aid would come to him from the Baron. Paul asks those gathered if they think the Lisan al-Gaib is stupid, and he will call out Stilgar. Jessica observes he is starting to use, if not accept, the religious mantle given to him by the Fremen. Paul says, "Ways change." A Fremen voice challenges and says they decide on the changes, which Paul accepts. And in the next part he uses the voice. He follows with, "You will hear what I have to say though." He says that over everything, the good of the tribe is what matters, to a lot of agreement. To this, Paul puts to them, then who rules this troop of our tribe, and who rules all the tribes and troops through the fighting instructors we've trained in the weirding way? Paul says even Stilgar does his bidding sometimes, and the wise listen to him. And then Paul asks if his mother rules, as the fighters listen to her, even though she has not fought herself. Jessica sees Paul's strategy is to go right to the depth of their uncertainty, dispose of that, and all the rest must follow. Paul says to be a leader you must be challenged in combat, and says the goal of the Fremen is to unseat the Harkonnens and make Dune a world where they can raise their families in happiness. Paul asks if a Fremen would smash his knife before a battle, and says no one, not even Stilgar, can stand against him in single combat. Jessica thinks, though her son uses the voice, it will not be enough with the Fremen, who are insulated against his vocal control. He must also catch their logic. This is when he holds up the message cylinder and says how Rabban fights alone, i.e. the Harkonnens are cut off, as one in the crowd confirms. Then Paul makes his real bid for leadership and brings out his father's ducal signet ring. And Paul says, "I swore never to wear it again until I was ready to lead my troops over all of Arrakis and claim it as my rightful fief." He puts the ring on his finger and clenches his fist. The cavern goes silent, and it seems he has them. Paul says he rules all. It was given to his father. Paul feels he almost has them convinced at this moment. Then he goes on to say that those with him will hold positions of importance, and Stilgar will be one of them, as he's wise. Do the Fremen think Paul would lose that to provide them with a circus? And then Paul says, "Who is there here to say I'm not the rightful ruler on Arrakis? Must I prove it by leaving every Fremen tribe without a leader?" He says he will not take from their strength, but will keep it for their real enemies, the Harkonnens. Stilgar raises the his crysknife, and the others follow. Still shouts Paul's name, Muad'Dib, and the others join in. When this dies down, this further, Paul tells Stilgar to kneel and hands him his knife, which he does. Jessica thinks this part was not planned, and the Fremen Nabe repeats Paul's words after him. "I, Stilgar, take this knife from the hand of my Duke. Then, when my Duke commands, there shall I place this blade." Jessica is stirred by these words, and I think this evokes a Atreides ceremony. Stilgar continues to repeat Paul's words. "Then I dedicate this blade to the cause of my Duke and the death of his enemies, for as long as our blood shall flow." Then at Paul's command, Stilgar kisses his blade. This fulfills part of the Bene Gesserit prophecy they set up. And then Paul says that Stilgar as a leader speaks with his voice, and so Stilgar loses no position in the eyes of the other leaders. Then Paul gives his first command as the leader of the Fremen, and they're nodded for his mother to accompany him, leading the way down off the ledge and through the throng towards the central passage and the living chambers that had been prepared there. As Paul pressed through the crowd, hands reached out to touch him. Voices called out to him, "My knife goes where Stilgar commands it. Paul Muad'Dib. Let us fight soon, Paul Muad'Dib. Let us wet our world with the blood of the Harkonnens." Feeling the emotions of the throng, Jessica sensed the fighting edge of these people. They could not be more ready. "We are taking them at the crest," she thought. So to my eyes, much of this is orchestrated, and there are still Fremen leaders to arrive at the gathering who will see that Paul has already won over much of the Nabes, especially the younger men who are pushing for him to fight Stilgar. And this keeps Stilgar in a position where he can serve the Atreides and allows Paul to attain his desert power as he willed it. I feel Paul and Jessica knew of this to resolve the tensions beforehand, and Stilgar perhaps, though I'm not entirely sure that he would be comfortable with it being so staged. And now, friends, I turn things over to you. Got a thought on this video? Well, drop me a comment down below then, let's talk.